Your kid just looked you straight in the face and lied to you. And you're standing there thinking, am I raising a liar? Did I do something wrong? Can I even trust this kid? I'm Cindy Macmillan, a licensed child therapist with 20 years of experience and a mom of two. I help parents break the cycle of reactivity and build real connection with their kids so that you can create a calmer home and thriving children. And today we're talking about lying, why it happens at every age, it's actually telling you, and how to respond in a way that works long term. Here is something that surprises most parents that I work with. Lying is not a character flaw. It's actually a developmental. And if we are being really honest with ourselves, we probably have told a lie probably pretty recently too. So understanding what's happening in your child's brain and in their world at each age changes how you can respond. Let me walk you through it. Okay, so around age 4, children experience a huge leap in their ability to use language and reasoning, and their inner world gets richer, more elaborate, and more vivid. We call this magical thinking, and it is genuinely a beautiful developmental milestone. It is the root of imagination, creativity, and a child's ability to dream about and relate to the future. But here's what it also means: the line between fantasy and reality is a little blurred for a 4-year-old. So when a 4-year-old breaks a window with a ball and immediately blames it on their imaginary friend, this isn't manipulation. This is not the beginning of a pattern that you need to panic about. Children at this age have very few psychological defense mechanisms. So magical thinking gives them a way to escape reality that feels overwhelming or scary. And an imaginary friend takes the fall so that they don't have to. At this age, our job is beginning to teach a child to take responsibility without shaming the behavior. Something like, I know this was an accident. Let's figure out together what to do next. You're building the skill of accountability without crushing the magical inner world that is so important right now. At 5, something slightly different shows up. It's common at this age for children to take things that don't belong to them and then lie about it. This is where consistent, regulated parenting can make an enormous difference. When parents are steady and when they teach socially appropriate behavior in a shame free way, children at this age begin to develop a real understanding of fairness. They start to grasp that belongs to someone else. How would I feel if it were mine? That understanding of fairness is actually what eliminates this behavior over time, not punishment, not shame. It's the consistent scaffolding of values and skills. A 6-year-old is in the middle of building their sense of who they really are. Their self-esteem is actually really fragile, and their identity is still forming. When they have to admit that they did something wrong, it doesn't just feel like I made a mistake. It feels like I'm a bad person. That's a threat to the self, and the brain defends against it. When we can understand this, we can stop taking the defensiveness personally, and we can start to respond to the fear underneath it. After 7 years old, children typically develop better control over their impulses and begin to genuinely understand that lying has negative consequences for their relationships, their trust, their world. They can hold that bigger picture in mind in a way that simply couldn't happen before. This is all relative, of course. Every child moves through developmental stages at their own pace. What matters is that you're tracking the pattern over time, not holding your child to a standard that their brain isn't yet ready for. When a child at 8 or older is lying consistently, this is where I want us to slow all the way down and get really curious, not reactive, curious. Because at this point, we're not just looking at behavior, we're asking what is underneath this. Why are they moving into protection mode? What doesn't feel safe about telling the truth in this family or with this parent or in this relationship? Has there been an experience, maybe something that has happened years ago, maybe something that's happened recently, where lying was the most rational, safe response available to them? Were these patterns that they've developed that were necessary to survive? At 8 and beyond, our job is looking at the behavior and asking, what does this child need that they're not getting when they tell the truth? What can we do to make honesty feel worth it again? And this is the part that takes the most courage. We also want to ask ourselves, what role might I, as the parent, be playing in this pattern? Keep in mind that we all lie from time to time. It's to protect ourselves, to protect our relationships. It's because lying is a right now solution. And when we are in our lion or turtle brain, we most likely aren't thinking of future consequences. Now, here's the next question every parent needs to ask. And it's one I use in every clinical assessment when a family comes to me about really any behavior, not just is my child lying, but how often, how long, and how big is this behavior? Because there's an enormous difference between a child who has lied twice a month and a child who is lying every single day. Both deserve our attention, but they need very different responses. So let me break down what I mean by each of these. A child who lies occasionally, once in a while, in specific situations, usually under pressure, is showing us something very different from a child who is lying as a default way of moving through their world. Occasionally, lying at any age is almost always situational. Something happened, the stakes felt high, and they reached for the nearest exit. That's a teaching moment. When lying is happening daily, when it's becoming the first response to almost any uncomfortable situation, we are typically looking at them using it as a strategy or a coping pattern. And that pattern is telling us something important about how safe this child feels in their world. And I want you to keep in mind how safe they feel doesn't necessarily translate to how safe they are. Duration matters because it tells us how entrenched the pattern has become. A child who started lying 2 weeks ago after a big transition, maybe a move or a new school or a family change, is probably responding to stress. When we address the stress, support the child through it, the lying often fades away. A child who has been lying consistently for 6 months, a year, longer, that pattern has had time to become automatic. It doesn't feel like a choice to them anymore. It just feels like what they do. This doesn't mean they're stuck like this forever, because the most amazing thing about the brain is it can change. Breaking these automatic patterns just may take more than a conversation. It takes consistency and patience and intentional work over time. There's a real difference between a child saying, I already brushed my teeth, and a child constructing an elaborate, detailed story over days or weeks to cover up something, and then maintaining that story. Small, low stakes lies about everyday things are part of normal development at almost every age. When lies are becoming more elaborate, when they involve looping in other people or recruiting siblings to back up their story, those are just signals that something deeper is happening. And that deserves a closer look. Because when we can get at the root of the problem, why feel so unsafe to tell the truth, we can start to work our way out of it in a directed and intentional way. When you put frequency, duration, and intensity together, what you're really doing is building a picture. And the picture points you toward the why. A child who lies daily about significant things and has been doing so for months, that child may need more and may need specific ways out of it. That might mean working with a therapist or child specialist who can help you to understand what's driving the behavior and what this child needs to feel safe enough to tell the truth. And I want to be very clear here. Seeking support is not a sign that you failed as a parent. It's a sign that you're paying attention, that you see your child, that you want to understand them, not just manage them. The goal at every level of intervention is always the same, to get to the why under the behavior. Because once you understand why a child is lying, you stop fighting the behavior and you start meeting the need underneath it. And that's where the real change can happen. Here's the part that I see in nearly every family I work with. We often teach our children completely unintentionally that honesty is risky. Let me show you what I mean. You buy your child new clothes. They try them on and something's wrong. Maybe the fabric is scratchy on their body. Maybe it's not what their friends wear. Maybe they're afraid of standing out. They tell you honestly, I don't really like this. And your reaction is hurt or frustration or I spent money on that. What your child learns in that moment, that honesty about not liking something that you chose costs something. It creates tension. It hurts you. So the next time you buy something, they smile and they say they love it. When they leave the house, they actually change their clothes. This is not about blame. I need to say that clearly. We are looking at a pattern together because awareness is the beginning of changing. Ask yourself honestly, when your child tells you something you don't want to hear, what happens in your body? Do you shut it down? Does frustration leak out? Do you go quiet in a way that they can feel? If so, your child has learned what to do. They are reading you. They are adapting to the situation. Here's what I want you to hold on to. It is never too late to change this pattern. Not at 6, not at 10, not at 13. First thing we want to do is get curious before you react. When you catch your child in a lie, that first moment is important. Your instinct is to confront, to lecture. But try this instead. Say something like, hey, I noticed you told me you finished your homework, and it looks like it isn't done. Help me to understand what happened. That phrase opens a door instead of slamming one. You're not accusing, you're inviting. Then name the reality without catastrophizing. You don't need to pretend the lie didn't happen. You can say something like, I know you told me something that wasn't true. I know that happens sometimes, so let's talk about it. This communicates the lie doesn't break us, and we can handle hard things together. Then reset the expectation honestly. Here is something I tell parents to actually say to their children, and I want you to save this one so you can remember it. You know what? In life, you might lie sometimes and get away with it. That's true. But in this family, we value honesty. Not because lying is shameful, but because honesty is how we stay close. Children want to know if they could get away with things. When you're honest with them about how the world works and then tell them that what your family values, something shifts. You're not naive. You're not setting up an impossible standard. You're just telling them what matters in your home. Children who lie are not broken. At every age, whether it's 4 and they blame their imaginary friend, or 8 and telling you a story that doesn't add up, or they're 40 and they're saying, oh, I love that dress on you. They are solving a problem the best way they know how in that moment. Your job is to help them find better solutions, to be the kind of parent whose reaction makes honesty feel worth it. You can do that. Not perfectly, not every time, but more and more. If this video helped you, drop a comment below. What age is your child and what does lying look like in your house right now? And don't forget to hit like and subscribe.